Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Bear Maple's Cozy Corner, where the world slows down, worries melt away, and stories wrap around you like a warm blanket on a cool evening. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Maybe you've had a busy day, maybe a quiet one. But now it's time to pause, breathe, and let your heart settle in for a gentle adventure. Tonight, I have a story about a little lantern with a big lesson to share, a tale of light, pride, storms, and the surprising beauty of sharing what we have. Are you ready? Then let's begin the story of the lantern that shared its light. In the small storybook town of Luminera, cobblestone streets twisted and turned like ribbons, winding between rows of warm little houses with flower boxes on every window. By day, the streets were alive with the gentle chatter of neighbors, but at night, the town transformed into a quiet, glowing wonder, lit by the gentle lamps that stood watch along the streets. And on the corner of Brassbell Lane and Moonmist Street, there stood a lantern named Luma. Each night, when the stars peeked out above, Luma's light spilled across the cobblestones, turning them into a path of gold. Travelers paused to warm their hands in her glow, and couples strolling by would glance up and smile. She loved, truly loved, hearing the townsfolk whisper to each other, "That lantern on the corner, it's the brightest light in all of Luminera." And when they said it, Luma's flame seemed to stand a little taller, flickering proudly in the cool night air. Luma believed her brightness was what made her special, and she guarded it the way a jeweler might guard their finest gem. Every evening, when the other lanterns along the street began to glow, they would sometimes look her way and admire her steady flame. Some of them, especially the smaller, newer lanterns with shy little flickers, would call out softly, "Luma, could you spare just a tiny spark? My flame is struggling tonight." But Luma would tilt her polished brass frame ever so slightly and reply, "Oh, I'm sorry, but if I give you my light, I won't be the brightest anymore." It wasn't said out of cruelty, at least, that's what she told herself. She believed she had to protect her glow, because what was Luma without her brightness? So night after night, she kept her flame to herself, and deep inside, she told herself the same thing over and over. Sharing means losing, and I don't want to lose what makes me, me. One evening, the air felt different, thicker somehow, heavy with the scent of rain not yet fallen. The wind swept through the narrow cobblestone streets with a restless energy. Lantern flames wavered and danced wildly, their light bending in the gusts as if trying to hold on. A few timid flickers even sputtered low, almost going out. The older lanterns, the ones who had seen many winters and weathered countless nights, began to murmur to one another in low, crackling voices. "A storm is coming," one whispered. "The kind that swallows the night in a blanket of black," another added, their glass trembling in the wind. But Luma only lifted her polished brass chin. Her flame leapt high, almost as if it were proud of the challenge. "I can handle any darkness," she said with a confident flicker. "After all, I'm the brightest." And with that, she glowed even harder, as if daring the wind and the unseen storm to test her. That night, the storm did not simply arrive, it marched in like an army. The first distant rumbles of thunder were low and steady, like the growl of something enormous waking up. Soon, the sky split with jagged flashes of lightning, and the clouds gathered thick and unyielding, swallowing the pale silver of the moon until not a single beam of its light touched the town. Then came the rain, not a gentle patter, but a relentless downpour. Sheets of water that blurred the edges of buildings and turned the cobblestones into slick rivers. One by one, the lantern flames that lined Luminera's winding streets bent, sputtered, and gave in to the storm's force, their warm light snuffed out in seconds. Luma stood her ground at the corner, her brass frame trembling as the wind tore at her. The darkness was no longer just an absence of light. It pressed in from all sides. It crept into doorways, filled every alley, and swallowed every shape until the world felt smaller and much more frightening. Luma's light pushed bravely into the shadows, but it could only stretch so far, just a trembling circle on the cobblestones around her post. Beyond that glow, the street seemed to disappear into a heavy, endless black. In the distance, she could hear the muffled thud of hurried footsteps and the sharp clatter of someone tripping over a loose stone. Children's voices rose in frightened sobs, calling for their parents. Neighbors shouted to each other, their words snatched away by the wind before anyone could answer. Everywhere beyond her reach, fear bloomed like weeds in the dark. And for the very first time, Luma's proud little flame flickered with something new: doubt. Her heart, if a lantern could have one, sank with the heavy truth. Her brilliant glow, no matter how admired, was still just one light, and it wasn't enough to guide the whole town through this storm. Summoning every bit of courage that shimmered inside her glass, Luma lifted her voice above the howl of the wind. "Come closer," she called, her flame swaying in the gusts. "Don't stay in the dark, I'll share my spark with you." Slowly, shapes began to emerge from the shadows. Weary, shivering lanterns with soot-stained glass and cold, lifeless wicks. They moved toward her, drawn by the promise of warmth and light. One by one, they lined up beside her. Luma tilted her glowing head toward the first, letting her flame stretch and kiss its wick. A tiny spark jumped, hesitated, then caught, and the lantern's heart bloomed with a soft, steady glow. She moved to the next, and then the next. Each time, the darkness retreated just a little farther, replaced by warm circles of gold that spread across the street. With every spark she gave away, Luma felt lighter, not dimmer. Soon, lanterns all across the street were shining again. The first few flames lit up like shy stars breaking through a cloudy night, but as they passed the light along, the darkness began to unravel. Golden circles spilled onto cobblestone paths, climbed the sides of houses, and danced across raindrops like liquid sunlight. Even as the storm raged, the brightness held firm. And in that glow, Luma saw something she'd never noticed before. Smiles replacing fear, children laughing again, and neighbors standing close together. The light wasn't just brightness anymore. It was safety, comfort, and togetherness. Luma realized something she had never understood before. Sharing her light didn't make her dimmer, it made the whole world around her brighter. The more sparks she gave, the more the darkness seemed to shrink away. Her pride melted into a deep, glowing joy, and for the first time, her warmth wasn't just from her flame, it was from knowing she had lit the way for others. She stood in the storm, shining brighter than ever, not because she was the only light, but because she was part of something bigger. When the storm finally passed and the stars peeked back into the sky, the town never forgot that night. They remembered how the streets had glowed with warmth and safety, even when the winds howled and the rain poured. And Luma, once the proud lantern who refused to share, was now lovingly called the lantern that shared its light. She had learned a truth that would guide her forever. Gifts, when kept to yourself, can only shine so far. But when shared, they can light paths you never dreamed of and reach farther than you ever imagined. The end. And that, my friends, is our story for tonight. If Luma's journey made you smile or warmed your heart, maybe you can share it with someone who might need a little light too. For more gentle tales like this, you can like, share, and follow or subscribe, so you'll always know when our next adventure begins. Until next time, good night, sleep well, and remember, your light grows brighter when you let it shine for others.